Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We got our man Jack Butcher here. What's going on, mate?
All right, afternoon, boys. How are we?
Good.
How's Visualized Valley sales last week, man? Is Celia happy, or what's going on here?
Not too bad, mate. Yeah, we're moving. We got a nice floor locked in.
Wait, are you
I like
on?
you refer to it as a floor,
Yeah.
like it's an NFT. All right, 1 second for new listeners as well. We got Trung Phan here as well, right at the hustle, and Elon Musk reply guy, aka Elon Musk is now your reply guy. And as always, I'm Bilal Zaidi as well. So today we're going to be chatting about our boy Elon, Jack Dorsey Cathie Wood. They had an epic discussion yesterday on the world of Bitcoin. We're going to give you the summary there. We're going to be talking about edge of the internet stuff that you guys have been asking for, something called Janky Heist. Begging for it.
Oh my goodness.
And we're going to talk a little bit about the billionaire space race and the difference between Bezos, Elon, and Branson. And if we've got some more time, we got some extra section for you guys as well. One thing I want to call out is the Janky Heist stuff, edge of the internet. If you remember from the last episode, we shared the Telegram group. And the link is in the show notes below. If you're in the group, you would have heard about this edge of the internet stuff a little bit earlier. So if you want early access, it's all free. You just click the link and join the Telegram. You'll hear about it first. But
wait, hold on. Not investment. I got to put a disclaimer here. So Jack and Bilal have been dropping their latest NFT purchases in there, and I don't want people thinking this is a pump and dump. Like, I'm not buying any of this
definitely
stuff.
Not. Yeah.
No.
This is the first time I've ever bought. This is the first time I've ever bought.
We hold to zero.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, you know how every podcast has a disclaimer, like nothing on this podcast should be construed as invest. We should put that in a Telegram group, just pin it at the top. Nothing in this Telegram should be construed. I mean, it's in the name of the group, but people are still buying. We're still getting messages of people being like, hey, I bought a Bored Ape because of Jack. I'm like, what do you mean?
Well, those guys are in good shape. Those guys are in good shape, but
they are in good shape. Unlike us,
you can't use that. Past performance is not indicative of future results.
Yeah, 100%.
This is true. All right, well, we're going to get onto that in a second. But Trung, do you want to kick us off, mate, with the Elon, Jack Dorsey, Cathie Wood? Like, what happened? It was kind of breaking Twitter yesterday. So three heavyweights.
I actually didn't even know that it was happening, but obviously everything happened so fast on Twitter, and I started seeing memes popping around of Elon looking a little bit older, Jack Dorsey with his shaman beard. But so it's called the B conference. It's like a crypto foundation that puts together this conference to be pretty pro crypto. The four people on this kind of Zoom call was Cathie Wood from ARK Invest, the CIO and the chief investment officer and the founder of ARK Invest. Elon Musk needs no introduction. And Jack Dorsey, CEO of Square and Twitter, obviously. It was being moderated by Square's head of crypto. I think his name's Steve Lee. But I'll just give a quick summary of everybody's key talking points. So Cathie Wood was basically, when Steve, the moderator, asked Cathie about her interest in Bitcoin, she said that her interest started in the early 2010s, when she had brought kind of the Bitcoin paper and the whole idea of the early days of crypto to her mentor. His name is Arthur Laffer. He's a very famous economist. He invented something or came up with something called the Laffer curve, which is actually really interesting. If anybody here Googles the Laffer curve, it's literally just a curve, like a XY axis, and it just curves. But his whole thing was you basically can measure how much revenue you can get from your population by the tax rate. So let me actually pull up the Laffer curve here, because the reason why I'm bringing it up is because it gives an idea about Cathie Wood and kind of her understanding about Bitcoin. So here's the Laffer curve. So this is her mentor. So for anybody that's listening here, what you're not seeing is basically there is a y-axis is the amount of revenue that a government can get from raising taxes. And on the x-axis is the tax rate. So it's a really interesting idea. So basically, you can raise the tax rate and keep collecting revenues from people, right? Up to a certain point. But if you start taxing people 70, 80, 90%, people are going to stop working. So his idea was like, there's this rule that he put in place, basically saying the more you tax people up to a certain point, you can get more revenue, but after a certain point, it's going to be not as efficacious, right? So he's a very rules-based guy. But the whole reason I bring up this long-winded thing is basically Cathie's point about Bitcoin was that it's a rules-based monetary system. So that's why she was fascinated by it, because her mentor had taught her kind of how to look at the macroeconomics. I hope that makes sense. Does it kind of make sense for you guys?
That was a good link. I was wondering where this was going, but you brought the link back. The rules, that makes a lot of sense.
I was just going to say, is there any consensus on what that number is at the top of the curve?
It's a huge. It's a massively politicized talking point now, sure. Right? It's like, as you can imagine, anything around taxes is politicized. But people will just bring up that chart, even though there's literally no numbers on it. It's just like
visualize value, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like, okay, well, if we raise capital gains of 40%, then people are going to stop investing. And then now we have less revenue, right? It's super politicized. But anyways, that's her view, very rules-based. Next one I'll go to is Jack Dorsey. He said two things really attracted him to Bitcoin. Number one was the community, and number two was the network. And he said this reminded him of the early days of the internet. And that's what attracted him to it. And then the two other parts that he kind of built on top of his two main points was, he's like, if this is the early day of the internet, that's the feeling he has about the community and about Bitcoin. He's like, internet also needs an internet native currency. We've talked about this before. And he's like, I believe that Bitcoin is the internet native currency. And then the third part of the thing that he kind of added was, obviously he founded Square. And the reason he founded Square was, actually, Bilal, you interviewed the Square co-founder, right?
Yeah, Jim McKelvey.
Why don't you tell the story about why he founded Square?
Well, apparently, I don't know how much of this is romanticized at a pitch after the fact, but I think it seems quite accurate. So he was an artist, and he did like some, I forgot what it's called, but where you blow glass or something, glass blowing maybe it's called. And so his name's Jim McKelvey. He had a bunch of other companies in the past. He knew Jack Dorsey from years before. I think Jack Dorsey was an intern at his old company. And can you imagine Jack Dorsey turning up as an intern? And apparently he was just this whiz kid, and he just like did everything. And everyone was like, what's he doing? He just turns up here and fixes everyone's problems, basically. So the long story short is Jim McKelvey was an artist. He was trying to sell a piece of his artwork, and someone wanted to pay by credit card. And he's like, oh, I can't process the credit card. And then he went home and he said, well, why couldn't, that's a bit weird. Like we're in 20, whatever it was at the time, 2010 or whatever. And it seems kind of crazy. I can't process a payment. And when he started looking into it, the economics of that whole world, as you'd imagine with anything financial and infrastructure, is just super bloated. It just costs way too much money for a guy selling a piece of artwork or a t-shirt on the street to use.
Predatory.
Exactly, yeah. And so they invented their first product, which is the thing, that little square white thing that you plug into the iPhone dongle, and it's very low cost. And you could swipe it and process the payment. So that's kind of the initial idea. And the cool thing is there's like a 14-part innovation stack is what he wrote his book about. And that allowed them to decrease the price of that hardware by like 10x. And it's actually legit. Like you've done business school stuff too. At business school, you do all the case studies and you're like, oh, this is how they did it. And it was 10 times X cheaper. And half the time it's kind of bullshit, right? Like it feels like they've just engineered it for the story. This was actually like, oh, okay. Everyone told them not to do it because it just doesn't make any sense. And but they found a way by not starting from the assumptions. So yeah, that's kind of the background of how they started.
Right. So the reason why I wanted you to give that background was like you touched on, right? It's a predatory pricing of the existing system. So Jack Dorsey explained that was one of also the reasons why he was very pro Bitcoin. He does a lot of Africa related initiatives, and the payments and banking system in Africa is a complete disaster, right? Relative to the West. And the West is also a disaster, to be quite frank, in a lot of ways. And he's just like, he wanted internet native money that could be used by these systems and average people without having to pay predatory prices. So that's Jack Dorsey's whole Bitcoin play in a nutshell. So just to summarize, he's attracted to the community and the network, reminds him of the early days of the internet. He wants internet native money. And then Square, the entire mission is to kind of avoid and go around the predatory pricing. which brings us back to Elon. So what's interesting about Elon was obviously Elon was a co-founder of PayPal, or the actual mechanics of how that happened is he founded X.com. Peter Thiel and Max Levchin founded Confinity. Those two companies combined, they're payments-based companies. And that was around 2000. So they were also, Elon at the time was going after the antiquated banking system. We talked about it, I think, a couple episodes ago about how his first internship was at Scotiabank. And he was just aghast at how the financial system worked, right? And Jack Dorsey actually mentioned that a lot of Square looked to PayPal as as inspiration. And fair enough, right? They're very much competitors now. They're both going after the entire kind of fintech stack. Square is about $110 billion company. PayPal is a monster now. It's $300 billion. If Elon had never sold his PayPal stock, I think he'd be worth about $30-40 billion, maybe $50 billion. It wouldn't be that clean because they were acquired, went private, and went public again. So it's not like he would have kept the same equity the entire way through. But it's just, I love bringing up that point because if this guy did nothing since selling PayPal in 2001, he'd be one of the richest guys in the world, right? Like one of the 10 richest guys in the world. But instead, he bet everything on SpaceX and Tesla. So quickly on Elon's point, I think Jack mentioned it in one of our chats. He thinks of thinks of money as an information system, right? He says the main use of money is as an information system to allocate labor. So you basically direct money to places where people can work and where you think where basically capital should be going to improve the economy and people's lives. So I got a couple of points here about his thoughts about money. So yeah, he thinks at the end of the day, it's just all these heterogeneous, and by heterogeneous it means there's just these banks that are not connected at all. They're connected via these old networks called ACH that don't provide for a very quick throughput. Throughput's a word he likes to use, like how many transactions can you do? How long do you have to wait? And man, it's great. Jack, you still have to wait a couple business days for transactions for VV. Isn't it crazy?
It's speeding up like Shopify and I use Mercury, the business bank, which is, I don't know if the infrastructure is any different, but it's much better than HSBC.
Okay. Yeah,
but it's not instant by any means. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what. So Elon was looking at as that information system. It's like, why is it so slow? It's like internet. We're looking at text, and at the time, 2001, video wasn't moving that fast. But it's like text can flip around the internet so quickly. It's like, why is the money system so antiquated? It's because it's all heterogeneous. Everybody has their own fiefdom. So PayPal was supposed to be a solution to that. And the other part of the equation, other than throughput and volume, that he wanted to address was security risk. And he thought if you could have one single ledger, basically PayPal was overseeing everything. Obviously, that makes it one point of security risk, but he's saying that they could secure the network. And that's why he's looking at Bitcoin as basically a lot of the elements that he was observing when he was launching PayPal that he's seeing come together. Obviously, as a lot of us, a lot of the listeners, and we will remember, there's a lot of controversy because a couple months ago, he had pulled Bitcoin as a payment mechanism for Tesla after famously including it. And he says because of the environment and, the cost of mining. And obviously that caused a video of, what's his name? Max, what's the guy's name at the Bitcoin conference?
Oh, Kaiser.
Dude.
Yeah, Kaiser just saying F Elon on stage in Miami and looking like a total cokehead. But so that to summarize, the three main points for each talker, and none of these are new, right? These are been floating around. But Cathie was like, my interest in Bitcoin is it's a rules-based monetary system, and that kind of came from her mentor Arthur Laffer, who that's how he thought about the economy. Jack Dorsey was about community and network, reminds him of the internet, and then also the Square component where he's like, I want to get rid of these predatory pricings. And then for Elon, it's a combination of, it's been his interest for decades now, and there is that component, I think Jack mentioned, shared with us a thread before. There's this whole component around, can Bitcoin as a sink for clean energy make the entire clean energy economy more efficient? Because you have wind and solar and they're off peak hours. And it's like, how do you store this energy? And because of how Bitcoin uses mining and electricity to make money, essentially, they think that there's a way to kind of pull it all together. And I'm not smart enough for that one.
Well,
that's the summary.
No, thanks for the summary, Matt. A couple other things I remember because I tuned in for the last half that I thought were quite relevant. Well, the first thing was on Elon in general because he wasn't really trolling at all, which was kind of refreshing. Like, it was actually quite a serious discussion, and I think a lot of people might have thought he might have gone into it being a bit of a troll like he is on Twitter, but they were actually all being pretty serious. He was wearing like a Bitcoin t-shirt, and he actually revealed that he still owns Bitcoin himself, which he's mentioned before. He also owns Ethereum and Dogecoin, and I think that's the first time he's mentioned Ethereum. I think people assumed on Dogecoin. And then the second thing, I think he also mentioned SpaceX has got Bitcoin on their balance sheet as well, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that was the first time. I don't know if that's the first time he's mentioned that, but I read that in the highlights as well. So overall, it was quite a positive discussion if you're kind of pro that world. And I was almost surprised he wasn't trolling a little bit. He also was urging Jack to just like get Twitter to do a lot more in terms of accepting cryptocurrencies from advertisers, he mentioned. And he said, wouldn't it be cool if you could have Bitcoin as like the native currency of Twitter at least, and there's just a lot more you can do. And Jack Dorsey himself was the one who said if we had done that from day one, if Bitcoin existed back then, and if they'd integrated it, there would have been so many things they could have built from day one. So yeah, it's quite interesting. The last thing I will say, to be fair on it, on the other side, Jack Dorsey said towards the end, kind of like a pie in the sky thing, which was like he thinks Bitcoin can bring world peace. So that was his like hope for it. It sounded a little out there, to be honest, when I heard it first. But I think his point of view was, if you look at how much corruption and death and violence happens because of corrupt monetary systems and governmental systems, he thinks that by unifying the world with one, method of exchange, that would actually bring a lot of peace. So that's not actually a crazy idea. It's just the way he said it. It sounded a little bit crazy.
We have to also address the elephant in the room.
Here we go.
We have to address why it sounded crazy. Because this dude, hold on. You want to know why it sounds crazy? It's because this dude was rocking this beard. Hold on, let's pull up the actual YouTube video. Dude, I was actually watching.
Sorry, this is for people only listening. Click the link in the description.
Pulling up the visual of why people weren't taking it seriously. I'll tell you what's funny. I was watching it. He was stroking his beard while Elon was talking a number of times. I was extremely, extremely distracted. But hold on a second. Let's do this. All right, here we go. Let's look at this dude. Oh, sorry, guys. Let's look at the beard, and then I'll show you
that
this
YouTube
funny
Premium,
meme
dude. You got
one of the Hustle's UX, our UX person did. Oh, there he is. He's stroking it, bros. Look at them.
Oh my God!
Can you guys see that?
Yo, my brother has a beard as impressive, if not even more impressive than Jack Dorsey, and all he does all day is this.
Impossible
and he
not
just
to.
plays with his mustache as well.
So let's summarize. When Bilal said that world peace is pie in the sky, for the listeners here, I'm repeatedly rewinding this video of Jack Dorsey stroking his beard. Anyways, that's why people are thinking that it sounds pie in the sky, but here it is. So I put up a beard hall of fame, and I asked our designer, Mallory Lee, to make a beard. No, this isn't the beard hall of fame. This is the beard Mount Rushmore. So obviously Mount Rushmore has the 4 presidents. So if you were to look at the beard Mount Rushmore, you got Tom Hanks here from Forrest Gump. You got, this is after, I believe, is Jenny dies, his wife or his baby mama. And then you got Harrison Ford from The Fugitive, greatest movie ever. You got super producer Rick Rubin. And then you got Dorsey. Yo, bro, check out the eyes.
The eyes looking lean as hell, son.
All right, just to summarize.
I have to admit, go on. No, I was just going to say, every time I see him with that big ass beard, like, he just reminds me of like a hipster guy in London who's converted to Islam. Like, he's got the length to be like a guy from the mosque that I might have grown up with, but like, it's a little bit too clean looking, you know what I mean?
How many hipster Caucasians have you seen in London with that look?
I mean, it's with the nose piercing as well. I mean, it's not as common. That's pushing it, but no, and all jokes aside, respect to him. I mean, I think he genuinely cares. I think he genuinely means what he's saying.
I totally, man. I know. Dude, Dorsey's a beast. I'm just saying, bro, I think your message would come across. Although, to his original point, right? He loves the Bitcoin community and network. I don't think they care that he has a beard. But the question is, I mean, if you're going to like the central bankers of the world and you roll in with that thing, it's going to be a little bit tough to convince them. But maybe it doesn't matter, right? We'll see. It's
Yeah, I
inevitable.
guess he's just like whatever by this point. I guess that's why the three of them together was a pretty powerful. I mean, you literally got the richest man in the world, or second, depending on the day of the week. You got Cathie Wood, who's like the star of that world, and then obviously Jack Dorsey is.
What an unbelievable trio!
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Jack, did you see anything? Anything else to add, mate?
No, I was just going to talk about the money as an information transfer idea that Elon brought up, and we talked about Dorsey and Jay-Z, and like the idea that I think these people understand like the transition that's happening is like from institution to individual. I think the fact that he even proposed getting Elon on to talk about this is like galaxy brain PR, right? It's like, who is going to draw more views to a Bitcoin video than Elon Musk? Like even Jack Dorsey and Cathie Wood, like they're titans of industry, but only the same people that know what they're going to talk about are going to tune in to watch that.
Yeah.
Elon, like by creating the controversy and then coming on to discuss it seriously, probably, I don't know, 10 million more eyeballs on that idea. But yeah, the 4D, 5D, 6D chess idea of like Elon's last piece of the puzzle, you know, transport, power, money. It feels like, you know, if you zoom out to somebody who really understands network effects, like money is the one piece of the thing that you can't really create a closed loop system or start to build something that you truly have control over, or give people true control over rather, unless you control the money issuance. And then if you take the other side of the argument, like Elon's technically a beneficiary of infinite monetary policy as well, right? Or his businesses, you could argue, are. But again, that's like big brain economist stuff that I can't go too deep on. But I think just fascinating, man, like the idea that I think Twitter is still maybe the most incredible network ever built, even though like the usage numbers wouldn't suggest that it's the biggest. But I think in terms of like the free movement of information and the speed at which information moves, I think Jack Dorsey's arguably built the most like liquid network that exists. So for him to be a proponent of Bitcoin is awesome. Right. And it makes sense that the ideology maps, right?
Oh, that's a great point. I never thought about that's super interesting. Actually, I had a point about I haven't addressed this yet on NIA, so I thought I'd just bring it up briefly. But then when people complain about all of the subsidies that Tesla's received over the years, or how, you know, a car, like for example, I bought a Tesla and I got $10,000 green credit, right? This is my rebuttal. It's very simple. If you look at any energy system over the past 150 years in the United States, nuclear, but forget nuclear, look at oil, the oil industry. Do you know how many trillions of dollars the US government, quote unquote, subsidized the oil industry with?
Right.
Dude, every aircraft carrier, the entire military was to protect the sea lanes so you could deliver oil, right? So you're talking literally trillions of dollars spent to protect an energy system because it obviously was worth it for the nation, right? So if Elon's getting a couple quote unquote $1 billion in green credits, and I know he got some very friendly loans at the beginning of Tesla to build Tesla. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket for an entirely new energy system that's being built, right? One that's sustainable and one that matters to the country.
Yeah, so I might be way off base of an extrapolation here, but if you want to bring that back to the world peace thing, it's like if everybody is invested in the same currency, then you are all protecting that same thing, right? The global goal becomes to preserve the integrity of the money network. By attacking it, you're destroying your own wealth. So like this stuff does sound like outrageous because of the world has functioned very differently for the past forever, right? This is a completely different dynamic, but you have to like, even people who think 10 years out or whatever, I don't think have the perspective that someone like an Elon Musk or a Jack Dorsey does, right? Where like they literally envisioned a version of the world that didn't exist and then built businesses that brought it to fruition at like a scale that's really, really hard to fathom. So it doesn't surprise me that, you know, somebody who's in the same room as someone that thinks they can colonize Mars thinks that they can like achieve world peace by, you know, creating the adoption of some monetary system.
Well, actually, everything that Jack just said, I don't think the extrapolation is absurd. It'd be a lot more believable if your beard was longer and you're stroking it.
I might get I got a little Snapchat filter. I could maybe put one on.
No, for the listeners, Jack's giving himself a little, I can't even grow a beard, man. Like, I'm like the
I was going to say.
Asian jokes. Like, well, what's funny? My brother, well, here, let me pull up my great-grandfather, the anti-French, anti-colonial nationalist. Hold on.
Oh, that's the anti-French. That's where it comes from.
Oh, yeah, man.
From the last episode.
Maybe that's my beef. Nah, dude, that's not my beef with the French. My beef with the French is that they think they're the shit. They roll in there, they're sweet and stuff. Yo, check out that beard, son.
Yeah, respect.
Clean.
Yo, that's a Dorsey-esque beard on my great-grandfather. Anyway, we can say that for another episode.
I also love his name, man. Fanboy. What was it? The surname, sorry?
Fanboy Joe, PBC.
That's amazing. All right, boys. Yeah, good discussion there. Anything else before we wrap that up?
All I got is this, but I can't find a beard version.
Let's do that.
Funny, bro.
Well, maybe someone will make.
Yeah, Jack's
got you on
make
big
a beard
screen.
filter.
All right, boys. So yeah, look, that was definitely interesting. I think we can move on to the next section. We wanted to get the edge of the internet stuff up front 25 minutes in anyway. So Jack, do you want to give us a bit of a background on this new project? You pinged it to me. Was it last night?
Yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, Wednesday. So that is and we shared that in the Telegram group with people as well.
Oh, let's pull some screenies. Let's pull some
screenies. And just while you're pulling up, just one piece of background I was going to say is last time you shared the Bored Ape stuff with us early, like episode 3 or 4. And I don't generally get FOMO, but it's one of those things now where I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, oh, come on, really messed up there. And it's just way too far now.
Explain to the listeners why you have FOMO over Bored Ape.
Because I felt like when I saw the Bored Ape stuff, I thought it was actually pretty cool. And I was interested in exploring NFTs. I didn't know that much. And I kind of trust Jack's judgment of not saying it's going to go up in price, but at least he's finding interesting stuff. But just at the time, I wasn't like ready to put the time into it.
You're burying the lead.
Yeah, of course. No, of course. The price going up is, I mean, it could have been literally a life-changing amount of money by now. And it's only been a couple months, So I'm not saying this thing is going to become that, of course. But I've kind of learned that when Jack brings something to the table, I'm going to at least check it out. You know what I mean? So that's the background from my side.
Well, I'm gonna say that this one is like, just in general, the space is like so saturated at this point where Bored Apes, like, if you could catch a wave and like ride it, that project has done that and executed incredibly well, like at every stage of the process. But the art was a thing that you look at and it's like, that's the thing that drew me into it. And if you love something to that extent, when you see it, there's more people that are having that same reaction, right? Like, great art divides, and like you either love it or hate it. And I love that one. And then this one that we're going to talk about is like, it's a little different for a number of reasons. The first one is like, it comes from an actual established brand. So that, I think, is a strength and a weakness.
What's the brand called again?
It's called Super Plastic. So let me share my screen. So I don't know if what is it? Oh man. The Super Plastic. That brand that makes the little brick bears. Do you know those?
Don't think so.
It's like street culture, like these little objects.
The brick bears? I know the brick bears. I used to own a couple of them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this big cultural behemoth thing, right? And this is the same. These aren't the people that make that, but it's that same category. They make like physical collectibles. Oh man, I don't know what's going on my screen share here. But let me just pull up this for an example. So they've been making these physical toys for a long time, and they've got partnerships with like gorillas and a bunch of like existing cultural entities, whether they're bands or labels or fashion companies. And like the art initially caught my eye. I saw someone on Twitter posting about it, and I just went over to the site, started looking around, and they have this really interesting mechanic happening, which I think is high risk. That, like from their perspective, because it requires it to perform well for it to all fulfill, if that makes sense. Like they're selling 9,000 of these NFTs, and originally I just saw the art and I was like, oh, that's cool. And they were $10 when I got on there, so I was like, I'm just going to get a few of those.
Oh my God.
Put them in, like I put them in a frame or something. Like I just like the art to begin with. And then I started reading into the story, and we've been talking about this on the podcast, like people that have more resources and more experience and like more cultural
I'm buying
gravity.
I'm buying one.
So this is the story behind this, is they're like, okay, we're two dudes and we've got this exhibit happening at Christie's this week. So this ran alongside a legitimate art auction at Christie's for NFTs. The story here being, and this is reasonably hard to follow, and I've been looking at it for 24 hours. The story is like this narrative that they broke into Christie's and they blew the doors off a vault. And in the process of blowing the doors off the vault, they blew all the collectibles to smithereens, right? And then they've reassembled them randomly. So there's like these combination of characters. Let me go back to the main page here. Are not the actual finished characters. They're like assembled randomly. So what they're going to do is drop rewards to people that have bought NFTs that match up the attributes across multiple NFTs.
Oh my God.
The idea that if you have like, say this trait, body to infinity. So there's going to be a to infinity head and a to infinity pair of shoes. And if you have that attribute across 2 or 3 NFTs, when the auction closes, they're going to airdrop that complete character to the Ethereum wallets that hold all 3 of those traits across different characters.
They were brilliant.
Dude, do you remember McDonald's Monopoly?
Yes.
You remember?
Yes.
Bro, this is like McDonald's Monopoly. If you got Park Place, nobody has ever gotten Boardwalk. Let's be honest. No one has ever gotten the Boardwalk stamp. Everyone get Park Place. I know a dozen people that got Park Place, man.
Yeah, so exactly right. And like, this is different than some of the lower effort stuff where it's like, hey, there's 10,000 of these and some of them are rare, some of them aren't, right? And then it just creates a secondary market where you're like, basically greater fool situation. And you could argue that all of these are to some degree, but this one has got a mechanic baked into it, which forces you, 1, to like learn about the project, and 2, to sort of participate in the market. And they have a Discord where people are actually swapping stuff. So,
to match.
Yeah, so it's like, I've got one with this, I need one with this. Can I do a trade with you?
That sounds a bit like the playground, man, when you go and do the Pokemon cards or the stickers or whatever.
Wait, hold on. So I got to bring something up, because a couple episodes ago, like back when Bilal started his FOMO, and Jack was telling us about Bored Ape, Jack was talking about how the community behind it is it's done so well, right? Bored Ape is on the Discord. It's so active. And just how you're building the momentum and culture. The genius, this added a wrinkle, right? It added that new extra wrinkle to make it even more viral. It's so smart. That is so smart.
Yeah, and they've got like, I think the art itself gives it some distribution because it is cool looking. I posted a few of them on Twitter yesterday, and I got some like decent sized accounts DM me like, what is this? They weren't going to engage with it publicly.
Why did they join the Telegram group? Bro, it's all there.
You got to get in the not investment advice Telegram. But the one thing that like is a big hurdle that this project's got to overcome is that I think they use like similar infrastructure to Top Shot. So they accept credit cards and Coinbase Commerce, which is all KYC, right? So you're like crypto OGs that have distribution to all of the like NFT degenerates that a Bored Ape project could onboard in like 20 minutes. A lot of those people don't want to put their name, their address, their credit card into anything. That's not a blanket rule, but that's some of the bear case I saw for this on Twitter is like, oh, the art is cool, but I'm not going to put my credit card in to buy it because, that's against the antithesis. That's the antithesis of decentralization and crypto and the NFT market. But, to take the other side of that argument, it's like, if you want NFTs to become a thing at scale, like you got to accept a credit card, or you've got to be able to get a user on board that, doesn't have to figure out how to manually complete Ethereum transactions and all of that stuff. So
yeah, I was going to say, Jack, just to add to that point, I thought it was really, I completely get it. Like if you're like a purist, which a lot of people are in this world, you're like, I don't want to use a credit card. I've got all this crypto. I want to use it. Completely respect that. But like you said, there's plenty of people who just are like trying to learn about this for the first time, and they don't want to, like, honestly, even me, like, I don't want to spend my existing Ethereum because it's like probably a taxable event, and like I just want to keep holding that, right? So with this, I'm like, oh, I can actually just like put in my credit card, and I still had to use MetaMask and log in and like transfer it over to that, which I thought was quite a cool. Well, they designed it fairly easily.
Agreed.
And I like on the top of the page somewhere it said like, what is MetaMask and like why do you need one in the first place? So it's just this big education moment for a lot of people, including myself. So I think it's pretty cool either way.
It maybe is unwise to take such a hard stance against projects like this as somebody who is invested in the long-term, growth of the space, because it's the same old maximalist argument, right? It's like everybody needs cold storage and they need to have their seed phrase like on some metal thing in a fireproof vault under their house. And so it's like, if that's what has to happen for Bitcoin
under the
and
dumbbell,
Ethereum,
mate, behind you.
if that's what needs to happen, exactly, then forget it, mate. Forget it. It's not going to happen. Like you're going to have your like little hobby money network forever. And I'm not necessarily saying that that has to be this centralized thing. I'm just saying like you have to be empathetic to the fact that most people don't have space in their brain to spend 50% of their time understanding like the nuances of the crypto network, in the same way that everybody who uses the internet doesn't understand TCP IP or servers or like internet service providers. So anyway, just to like close the loop on this, this is a risky strategy too, because you have to get enough people to participate to sell them all out, to get like all the mechanics to come into play, and hitting this roadmap that they put together, which is a Japanese auction, which means based on interest, the price goes up. Here are the 22 originals I was talking about. And if you go to this, go in the Telegram group, we got the link in there. It explains all the milestones of how they change the pricing and then how they're going to perform the airdrops afterwards. But essentially it's, utility promised into the future based on how you interact with it at the drop date. And then the other thing I think is worth mentioning is they did this. They have a relationship with Christie's, and today they auctioned 8 one-of-one original pieces at Christie's. The most expensive one went for $52,000. So this is a single NFT, and the cheapest one was 18. So this is not like Beeple money or anything like that, but I think it's indicative of an appetite for this aesthetic. And I think this aesthetic is like very closely aligned with like people who want to express their personality visually or the things they value visually, in the same way like Brick Bears and Supreme and this like segment of street culture has this very recognizable aesthetic.
Or the guys or girls that own like 100 Brick Bears, right? Like, so I had a Bart Simpson Brick Bear, I had a Darth Vader Brick Bear, and it's like, imagine people, I'm like a total noob, that have hundreds of these. You're saying this is in the digital realm for them, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's also another barrier that they're overcoming, right? Because people love the tactility of those things, and you could argue maybe that's why people are invested or display those. But again, you have to think like, what is somebody's collection going to look like in 5 years? It's probably going to be a digital architect builds a museum for you. You put it on your rented land in, Metaverse X. People strap on their VR headset and they go and look at your Brick Bear collection in there, and they pay for a ticket. Maybe that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And actually, Jack, the one thing to add on that original site that you'd shared, there's like a video as well, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have to play the video. Yeah, which I thought was quite cool. And it was like showing them breaking into the safe or whatever. Yeah. And it was kind of like a fun, I thought it was pretty well made, but I'm not like an expert.
Read the first sentence. There's a hilarious, read the first sentence.
NFT event inspired by a mix of Japanese reverse auction and Hennessy, run by two complete idiots, slightly faded from paint fumes.
Yeah. The page, the way they've written it is hilarious, man.
So there it is, right? There's the kind of the aesthetic of the project right there. It's like, don't give a F.
Yeah, I think that's like, again, same way Bored Apes kind of aligns with the attitude of the crypto space. It's like, it's sort of hard to quantify, right? But it just feels like it's got the attitude that maybe aligns with the crypto community.
Man, by the time this episode drops, there might not even be any more super plastics available. There's only 1,700 left. Yeah,
so I think they're doing one of the reveals later today. But I just wanted to show this too, where like they've got some interest in. It's very similar to that Brick Bear thing. I'm not sure maybe it's like a second tier brand to that, but I think the art is great. So I'll just show you one last thing and we'll move on. But this is my spreadsheet that I've been working on.
In secret.
To make sure I've got all of the traits going here. So I completed the set.
Looks like your old, the other one you shared with us was the Bored Ape one, right? But you did this one yourself.
All right, so what are the numbers?
So this is how many times those traits appear in the NFTs that I bought. So you need one of each of every one to get airdropped the full character. At least that's what's been promised. So we'll see what happens.
How you looking right now?
I'm good, mate. I'm set. I was in the Discord last night swapping, and I've got it all covered.
Hold on here. So how many hours have you put into Janky?
Probably 46.
46.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't understand how you're. Listen, actually, no, that's unfair. I do understand. Like, I watched probably 2 hours of Giannis Antetokounmpo highlights from the Milwaukee Bucks last night. So, different strokes for different folks, right? You can go down rabbit hole. This is amazing, though. Your rabbit holes make money. Mine do not.
Well, this one we'll see. I think this is like a way riskier bet than Bored Apes or longer play, but I think they're so cool that I'm happy to own the art, and we'll see what happens long term, because there's a lot of things that can go.
In it for the tech.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that can go wrong on this one, admittedly, and not having the built-in support of OG community is a huge. I think it's a huge risk, because that's essentially like a bottomless pit of capital and support, which is not currently aligned with this. And they had a bunch of technical errors issuing the stuff, because they're using this hybrid fiat crypto, check out with a credit card and then get an email and then claim your NFT. So they're overwhelmed with people that ballsed up that process or whatever. So we'll see what happens.
But as you say, Jack, when everyone figures it out, that's when the opportunity's gone, man.
Exactly right, mate. Exactly. And I'm operating from a perspective of being up a silly amount on the Bored Ape. So chuck a bit of gains back at something a bit riskier.
You're basically, you're just you're doing the karma game, man. It's like, listen, I've already been treated so well by the community. I'm just going to give back.
Well, I would argue that these guys are probably further towards the corporate end of the spectrum than the individual artists. They have a relationship with Christie's. They've obviously got some sick dev team working on this. So it does cross my mind as well. It's maybe your money is should be also allocated to up and coming starting artists that don't have the sophistication to engineer these mental smart contracts. But it's also a learn by doing thing, research for evolving the visualized value NFT game as a whole, right? So eventually I want to be doing is things like this that have these mechanics of utility and community, and figure out ways to make art more interactive and interesting.
So all this is you're building it's everything just in your head, right? You're about to drop something that's going to be along these lines. You will.
Yeah. At some point, yeah.
Sick.
Incredible.
Well, thanks for sharing, mate.
Don't tell us beforehand, man. We don't need the insider. I want to keep everything above board here.
Good.
I don't want people thinking it's because we're all on a podcast that we're gonna get insider access to VV, special
pre-mine. No. None of that will be going on.
No, well, and just to clarify again, obviously this is not investment advice, but like honestly, at that rate, I bought a few, and they're like a few $100s or something like that. And to me, it's like you said, like the ones I was on it for like an hour at least last night, just pressing roll again. I was sending you a message with a video, or actually I sent it in the Telegram, and it's kind of addictive. Like after a while, you're like, oh, I'm looking for that one, and then I found one, and I'm like, I need to open a new tab to hold that one in position in case I really want it. So yeah, it's pretty fun, man.
That's fun.
All right, boys, let's move on to the next one. Unless you have anything else before we talk about going to space.
No,
ready?
Do it.
All right, Trung, you had an epic thread, and this is the one I think that Elon replied to again, right? This was about the meeting between Bezos and Elon Musk. So we wanted to break that down because obviously, as you're bringing it up, in the last week, both Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos both went into space. So why don't you hand it over to you, man? Like, what's been going on, and what's the difference between the two companies?
Approaches? Yeah, we'll do something funny. We'll first talk about Elon as my reply guy. So
we got a spreadsheet. Trun's got a little deck ready.
You guys will laugh.
Not even saved. Untitled presentation. Love it.
Untitled presentation I just put together for our YouTube watchers. The listeners, I'll just walk you through. So I only really got into Twitter like last June, and the way somebody described Twitter, I can't remember who told me that, but I love the description of it, right? It's like when you play Fortnite, there's like a new map every day, right? And so you get dropped in, you're like, if you played on Wednesday, the map on Thursday is gonna be a little bit different, and you're excited to see what's on the map, right? Well, Twitter is the same. Every day you wake up on Twitter, there's a new map, and the new map is whatever's trending, or the joke that people have is, there's always one person that gets talked about on Twitter, and your job is not to be that person. So like, I love that framing of it because Twitter really is just a game. Like I get the same dopamine hits from it, like somebody that's good at Fortnite does. And if Twitter is a game like Fortnite is, then Elon's like the big boss, right? Like he is one of the guys that if you're talking about like who on Twitter is like the big boss of the video game, or like, you know what I mean? It's like, listen, people hit Elon's replies, like no joke, right? Like people are going to be laughing. He's like, oh my God, look at Trung. Like he remembers every single time Elon replied to him. It's like, dude.
He has a deck with every single response.
Well, I had to pull it for you guys. You asked for it. But of course I remember, man. It's like,
that's great.
Right? It's like, and you look at, I know that there's going to be some naysayers, but what's so funny is every big account we know, they're hitting the replies as soon as Elon tweets, right?
Trung, I don't want to take you off your momentum, but like if we go back to like the earned media idea, an Elon reply is like hundreds of thousands of dollars of earned media, if you want to translate it that way.
Well, dude, I'll walk you through. So I'm like a couple months into Twitter, and I'm effing around, getting used to figuring out the landscape, just like somebody on Fortnite, right? And Elon replied, and listen, I'll admit, I was a simp. When Elon replied to me, I was so new to Twitter. I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. So I just wrote about how Elon had taken his PayPal money and put it into Tesla and SpaceX. And then he replies, to be frank, in the early days, I thought there was a 90% chance that both were going to go to zero, right? And the press and media basically agreed with me, and they're probably right. I'll tell you what's funny. We talked about this before. CNBC wrote an article about this interaction. So like, you can laugh at me remembering like Elon reply guying me, but here's where it got a little bit absurd. So I'm just on this dopamine high. It's the first time, like this second or third time that one of my tweets like really blows up. It's all because of Elon. And then I literally, within 24 hours, I bought a Tesla because of the reply. I went home and I go to my wife. Here, I don't want to sound like it's outrageous. We were giving up the lease on our Mazda CX-3, right? Just a nice, humble family car. I was going to get a CX-5. The CX-5 is a fantastic vehicle, by the way. I think it's a $25,000 SUV. It might be $30,000. Great car. But I've been thinking about getting a Tesla. And I'm like, you know what? I went home, talked to my wife. I'm like, let me look at the financing options. We'll stretch it over as many years as possible, just so the monthly hit's not too bad. And I need it for the story. Like, I've done a lot.
That's the most hilarious thing.
That's great.
Elon responds, and I
Elon
bought a
responds,
Tesla.
let me
It's
buy
brilliant.
it. Well, here's another thing is, I swear to God, I received delivery of the car about 10 weeks after I ordered it. It's the same day I hit 6,969 followers. I swear on my kid's life, this is true. And it's hilarious. The story just gets better and better. So that's my first few interactions with Elon. I have since had a couple more. I'll post a couple of them. I posted this photo of him and Bezos. This is actually the one that he replied to again. So this exact photo got replied to twice. He goes, wow, hard to believe that was 17 years ago. I'll tell you what's funny about that. Business Insider wrote an article about him tweeting to that thread. It's just like, people just itching for content, right? It's like, it's a total non-interaction. But to, Janky talked about it, we just brought it up. It's like, he's the big boss on Twitter. He's like, you play that game. If he's interacting, people are writing about it. And then I just wrote, and this goes back, I'll rewind it now to the start of this segment. So, well, here, you guys will laugh. This is another one. I didn't even realize this one. Somebody took this screenshot. He liked one of my memes. I think this is back in November. And this meme blew up. I thought I was like a genius. I was like, this meme started running. It hit like 1,000. I'm like, oh, wow, this is really going. I went to sleep. Woke up the next morning. It's at 15,000. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so good at Twitter. And then my cousin just sends me this picture. It's like, actually, it's because Elon liked it. And you're talking about distribution, right? This guy likes your tweet and it blows it up. Like, this thing ended up getting like 40,000 likes because he liked it. It is funny though. So let me just go to, So I posted a thread 10 days ago. I'll be fully frank, I reused some content, but who cares, right? It was about a meeting that Elon and Jeff Bezos had in 2004 to talk about space. I'm like, if I'm going to reuse this content, what other time am I ever going to reuse it? It's going to be the day before Bezos goes to space, right? And secretly, I knew because Elon had responded to the first photo that I tagged him with the two of them. I'm like, you know what? There's a chance because this guy's been taking shots at Bezos. He might get in the replies here. So I did it kind of intentionally. But let me pull up the thread. You guys will laugh. Trung T fan, 2004. Okay, here we go. All right, so for the listeners, I just pulled up the thread. I'll walk us through the story briefly. But oh damn, it's at 40,000 likes now. That's big for a thread, man. But I'll tell you what's funny about this. I knew I was going to pull him out or I had a strong feeling I was going to pull him out because 3 months ago, Elon's kind of been revving up the beef with Bezos. And here he was, such a troll, dude. So 3 months ago in April, SpaceX, here on the screen, SpaceX won a NASA contract to do a lunar moon lander, right? And Blue Origin, Bezos' company, was also going for that contract. So somebody posted an article about Bezos suing then NASA or asking for review of the contract. And then Elon's replies, you might have seen this already. He replies, can't get it up. And then in brackets, to orbit, LOL, right? Just totally trolls Bezos. But a lot of people didn't see it after. Dude, he's such a troll. Elon took a screenshot of the New York Times front page, which had that article about Bezos losing the contract. And he freaking just uses his iPhone. He scratches out the origin in the Blue Origin name and then writes balls underneath it. So Elon in April just totally trolls Bezos. And then shortly after, Bezos announced he's going to space, which is why I wrote the thread. But yeah, I'll walk through the thread super quickly. I'll do super high level. I could probably stop the screen share now. But 2004, they meet. And what people don't realize is actually Blue Origin started way before SpaceX. It's almost 2 years before SpaceX. There's a viral video going around of Jeff Bezos on Charlie Rose in 2000 saying that if what would you do if you could, money or you could do anything? He's like, honestly, I want to go to space. This was 20 years ago or 21 years ago. And so he had founded Blue Origin in 2000. He's friends with Neil Stephenson, who in the sci-fi community is like a god. He wrote the book. What book did he write? Snow Crash. It's about a lot of the ideas. Snow Crash was where the idea of the metaverse comes from, and so Neil Stephenson is from the Seattle area, friends with Bezos, and basically Bezos tells him, "Hey, I want to start a space company," and Neil Stephenson's like, "Okay, why don't you start today?" And then Bezos is like, "Yeah, why not?" So he hired Neil Stephenson as employee number one. If you go to Neil Stephenson's website now, he'll have a whole segment about his early days at Blue Origin, and basically because it was so early, and the idea of a private citizen going to space was actually mental. So like the U.S. space program actually went through a really deep funk after the 1986 Challenger explosion. I don't know if you remember this, but they shot a shuttle into space and it blew up, and that kind of put a whole chill on the U.S. space industry. And we're talking like 86. So by 2000, America hadn't really gone anywhere. They hadn't been back to the moon since 69, right? So like the space race was everything in the 60s. It was like framed around the Cold War, like us versus the Soviet Union. JFK, as part of his election victory in 1960, like the big idea that he put out there was like, we're going to get to space by the end of the decade, right? It's like this idea of the period of like big thinking and like how to rally a country around an idea. So that kind of went away. So in 2000, the idea of a private citizen, let alone a country going to space, is insane. So Bezos starts a space company, but his tact was he wants to keep it small based on his Amazon experience. He's like, I don't want more than 70 employees. I think that constraints build innovation. This is how I want to think about it. I want a lean team, just like Amazon's a lean team. He only showed up once a month. It was one Saturday a month. Very low funded project. Conversely, Elon, after PayPal, he put 100 million into SpaceX. So he got 180 million from PayPal. He put 100 into SpaceX, 70 into Tesla, 10 into Solar City. So the majority of Elon's PayPal money went into SpaceX. Now, Elon's reason for going to space was very different than Bezos's. Bezos wanted to build a space economy. You know, he's a full, he's a capitalist. He thinks in the business mind, right? And I actually saw a very interesting parallel. When Bezos found out about the internet, we talked about this before, he's like, oh my God, the internet's growing at 30, 40,000% a year, or whatever the number was. I need to be involved in this for like economic reasons, right? When Elon Musk found out about the internet, there's old videos on the internet that you'll see on YouTube. He talks about when he found out about the internet, he's like, oh my God, this is a global brain. So you see how they differently think about these things, right? And the same thing applies to space. Bezos sees space as a way for a new economy, a space economy. Elon saw space as a way to find another planet for humans. So it's very interesting how they think about things, right? Bezos is coming almost from a purely business lens. Elon is much more than humanitarian, like not calling him a humanitarian, but he's like, I'm a human. Like I want another planet for the human race.
He wants humanity to progress is the way he describes it, right?
And the way he thinks about the internet is the same. He's like, it's a global brain. That's why he's into Neuralink and the whole AI thing. It's actually, I think I need to do a deep dive about how different these guys' mindsets are, right? Jack, what do you think about that? It's pretty crazy.
I was just gonna say it's the beard stroke in perspective.
Some things to think about. So
actually, can I just give one, and I can't remember the details, but I heard someone describe it recently, because the flip side to all of this is the kind of haters side, right? And I always like to hear their point of view, even though it's normally annoying. The haters' point of view is there's all these problems on Earth. Why are you going to space? You know, and I can understand without digging in why someone might think that. At the same time, someone mentioned the other day something about the shipping trade, or like when people start exploring different continents, especially with
like Christopher Columbus. I mean, listen, He's not a good dude, but I'm saying when he was going to explore the new world, people are like, oh my God, we have all these problems at home. You just have no idea what's going to happen.
But you don't know, and you don't realize what comes out of that, right? Like obviously, like some terrible stuff comes out of it. People got killed, etc. I'm not glossing over that, but also there were things that we don't even realize came from like the shipping trade. The example I remember was like the 20% carry that we're used to, like
carry insurance.
Yeah, exactly. And the incentive structure essentially that has driven, billions and trillions of dollars worth of economic development and development of people, obviously, across the world, comes from that sort of like incentive in the first place. And that came from people exploring in the first place, because the shippers were able to take a 20% carry essentially of whatever they were carrying across the Atlantic Ocean or whatever. So anyway, that's maybe another history professor.
We can add one more part to your.
Go on.
What I'll add is this: is to like SpaceX. You have to remember they're launching these satellites and they're creating Starlink, right? It's internet system for basically the 2-3 billion people that don't have internet. It's like the idea that my biggest gripe about that whole argument, because what I keep on seeing is like we have global hunger. It's like, listen, man, global hunger is not a money problem. Global hunger is a logistics problem. It's a government problem, right? 40% of food goes to waste. Like money is not what's going to solve the global hunger problem. The solutions have to do with policy, has to do with infrastructure, it has to do with logistics, like things we already have in place. It just needs to be managed way better. So, and then a lot of these other criticisms are just like, it's just totally
anti-billionaire sentiment.
Money is not the problem here, man. A lot of the problems here are not money related. It's government related, right? Not to say that obviously billionaires couldn't pay more taxes in some capacity or maybe contribute to other programs. But I think the space race is a very valid thing to be happening. I think there's going to be a lot of positive offshoots from it.
Well,
completely.
One of the I think one of the most basic things, you can go down the sailor rabbit hole on this, but it's the humanity advances based on how effectively it can channel energy. So you imagine these experiments, the output of these experiments is essentially going to advance the ability to channel energy, right? Essentially breaking the laws of, not breaking the laws of physics, but breaking the things that humans were able to do under their current understanding of the technology that we have. Is like, maybe it's controversial to say, but trickle down innovation. There's a great book by Matt Ridley, if you haven't read it, called How Innovation Works. Have you ever read this book? But the opening paragraph is like, you're sitting in your living room in the UK, your fire is lit with Russian gas, you're like drinking French wine, you're eating Spanish food, like Spanish Parma ham, whatever else. And it's like, all of these things are the result of, like you're saying, Trung, people investing in infrastructure and systems that make goods and services move more fluidly around the world. And then you could take all of this back up to our original point, which is like, if you have a monetary system that is more, that is fairer and more transparent, maybe that like adds some liquidity to these problems too. It doesn't get stuck and held up in the same capacities that it does now with all the conflicting incentives that exist.
No, 100%. I think totally agree with that entire premise. Man, that is a great book, by the way. I have read that. Maybe we should talk about it in one of the episodes.
Can I just add, Trung, as well? I think this is actually a really interesting discussion around like it's just kind of sad to me that we've got to a stage where this is something we used to just celebrate across the board, that someone literally, not defending every single thing Jeff Bezos has done, of course, but like the fact that someone like him quit his job, built something that literally was like every pocket of the world is using this thing he made. And we just got so used to all the stuff that we get basically for free. Like the same with Google and Facebook, for all the bad things that we can complain about in government or whatever, that they've been talking about in government. Like, man, we literally open up a tab right now and literally ask any question in the world and get access to like MIT professors explaining stuff for free on internet, and a person in India can listen to that as well as you in Canada.
Well,
we just got so used to it.
I would say one like stark example is like, would you rather have the US government run the healthcare system or Jeff Bezos?
Oh, dude,
how much are drugs going to cost in either scenario?
Right. COVID would have been beaten, man, frankly, to be honest, my view. I mean, there's a tweet early in the pandemic. It's like, man, just give the vaccine to these guys. It's like, they know how to, they understand logistics, right? And man, it's just so hard. Listen, I'm parroting what Bilal says. Like, just because you can say this doesn't mean you're agreeing with every single thing they do. But
Exactly.
but this is the contra, right? It's like the complainers, they pretend like nothing is positive, and they're buying Amazon, they're using Prime.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. They're normally not like they're speaking with their words, but they're acting in a completely different way.
Dude.
And just one other example I'd give, sorry, Trung, is like when I worked at the charity for a couple of years. That was the biggest eye opener for me, because I came from this like business world where traditionally we would think the whole nonprofit sector is just inefficient, which generally speaking, a lot of it is. But when I got there, I was like, okay, let me go with an open mind and see what this is about. And I started realizing all the things I just didn't know anything about. At the same time, I would meet so many people who, majority of people like, oh, that's cool what you're working on, whatever. But then there was always just that cynical person who would just be like, oh, well, those rich people, they're just giving it to get their tax back, aren't they? And they could just never see the good, no matter what you were doing or whatever anyone was doing. And again, with all these things, it's nuance. Yeah, they did get a tax incentive, and that's why it's there. It's because it's a good thing for society to incentivize that. But like, I just know those people personally, and I've met a lot of them. Like, they don't need to be giving that much money the way they do, like a lot of them. So it's just, I think no matter what, there's always that cynical person who's
dude, I can't post about big tech without, I know for a fact I'm gonna get half a dozen. Oh, we need to tax them more. It's like, oh my God, this, guaranteed, right? I literally just mute them. I'm like, these people aren't interested in having a real conversation.
Twitter is not really the place for that nuanced discussion, right? Yeah.
Man.
But like, I'll take not the counter side, but I will take the like cultural, like the feeling of the hive mind essentially is like technology is killing the middle, right? So the what Amazon does to small businesses is the most inevitable thing in the world. Even what Yelp does to restaurants, right? Like the advancement of like, what's the Naval quote? Technology democratizes production, but consolidates consumption. So if you're the best of the world at anything, you get to do it for everyone. So what that does, I think, leads us to an inevitable place where it's like you're either this incredibly huge monopoly or you're this like hyper specialized individual person or really, really small group of people that do something unique. And I think people are like feeling that even if they can't articulate it or they're not like invested in, not invested is the wrong word. They're not like literate in some of the ways that this machine works, right? Where it's just like I feel like somebody tweeted this a long time ago. Your culture isn't changing, it's dying. Like, people complain about culture changing. It's not changing, it's dead. Like this is like your way of life is deteriorating in front of you, or like, rose tinted glasses on the past and all of these ideas that, if we could go back to 10 years ago, life would be old days. much better. And then if you actually look at, some of the indicators there, like, I don't know, child mortality or like how many people have access to like food, shelter, et cetera, like if you're able to take that macro view, which I empathize with people that aren't in a situation where you can, like the way you respond is like, if person X paid more taxes, then this problem would be fixed. It's like,
because people want to point a finger at something that isn't themselves. And sometimes there is a finger to point at, like there's something to point at, but anyway, this is a bigger discussion around like
I got one
responsibility, but go on.
I got one closing point. I don't, we'll have to link this tweet, but it said, if you think Jeff Bezos going to space is a waste of money, wait till you learn about the government.
Yeah, I saw 100%. That. I saw that. That was brilliant. Yeah.
So I'll just rewind and I mean, jump quickly back into it. I don't want to waste too much time on it. So early 2000s, governments have stopped going to space. Nations have stopped going to space. So you have these private citizens now that they have the means and the desire to go to space. And Blue Origin started before SpaceX, but SpaceX, again, Elon put a lot more money into it right from the bat. He's like, he has urgency, right? This is what I'm talking about. His mission is different from Bezos' mission. He wants humanity to have another planet. Whether or not I agree with it, I mean, I think his logic is pretty clear. It's like, we only have one right now. It's like, probably should have a backup. So he initially wanted to only send rats to space just to make people believe you could still do it, right? He wanted to get that kind of the hype going again. So he went to, what's crazy with him is he actually flew to Russia and tried to buy 3 ICBM rockets. I mean, think about how crazy that is. This guy gets 180 mil and literally could just be on an island for the rest of his life. And I know some people are like, oh, that's outrageous, just crazy billionaire thinking. And he wasn't a billionaire at the time, but it's like, this guy flew to Russia, was ready to plump 30 mil to buy 3 rockets just to hype people up about Mars again and space. But anyways, the SpaceX gets going. It launches its first rocket in 2008. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, if you watch some of that stuff, very emotional. It's like it was like their first 3 like blew up, and they're basically down to the 4th one. Like if the 4th one didn't work, they weren't going to get the government contracts, and like that was the end of it, right? So like a lot of crazy of these near-death moments. But yeah, so SpaceX has been way ahead for a long time, and the mind share has been there. And then Bezos, around 2017, he's like, what's going on? Why are we so slow at Blue Origin? It's because you haven't gone all in yet. So he's like, that's when he started saying, I'm going to sell $1 billion a year in Amazon stock to fund Blue Origin. And that basically takes us 4 years later. He's in space. He's probably going to be CEO of Blue Origin now. If you've seen some of the videos that came back, this dude's so pumped. It's like, what else is he going to do, right? And so I think to summarize is Bezos and Musk have 2 very different views on space, just like they have different views on the internet. And it's so interesting how they think about it. I actually think Musk is just from if you're playing persuasion mindset, his reasons for going to space are much more human, right? It's like, I want to extend humanity's opportunity. I want to give us another planet. Bezos wants to build $1 trillion economy in space. It's like, I think if you're looking at the 2 of them,
which is incredible in its own way. That just the thought of that sounds crazy.
It's crazy,
like,
right? It's like
don't even know what that looks like. Like what the hell is going on out there?
It's just so it's just almost that's why people get upset too. There's like this. I mean, Jack brought this up in a previous episode. Like you can't even comprehend the timelines that Elon's thinking on, right? And I mean, and it's showing the guy is stressed. If you're looking at the B conference video, he's looking a little bit older now.
He's looking a little thick. I'm not gonna lie, but
yeah, and but yeah, it's funny, super interesting. If I were to say like who's going to quote unquote win the race, I think because of Musk's vision, I think you're going to attract more people to that. It's like, you know, do you want to build $1 trillion economy in space, or do you want to save humanity, right? That's the thing about. So Jason Calacanis, the VC and the co-host of All In podcast, he loves talking about. It's like the problem with betting against Elon is like you're betting against humanity, right? It's like, what is this guy trying to accomplish? He's like trying to get us a renewable, sustainable energy system, and he wants to get us to another planet. A lot of people think that's hubris, or however you say that word. It's like arrogance, but it's like, man, it's like if you think about it from a top level, it's very persuasive what he's trying to accomplish. So, anyways, that's kind of the SpaceX Blue Origin.
For the breakdown, man. Yeah, that's super interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, I will say that it's kind of cool just to have people excited about space again. And I'm not like a big space geek or anything. And even for me, I was watching the video and I was just thinking, man, can you imagine looking out that window and looking down on Earth? Like it's already, when you're in the sky in a plane, it's already kind of incredible. We've got so used to doing it, but when you look down and you're flying through mountains or like looking at the ocean, it sounds kind of like cheesy, but like, man, it's kind of incredible. Imagine doing that in space, looking down and being like, wow, that's, I don't know how you'd feel. Thing, yeah, right? it's take you onto another level, man. So super cool, man. Boys, how are we doing for time? We got time for Jack's last thing on Satoshi branding, or Trung, how you doing? Do you need to pick up your kids?
No, I can. If you guys want to rip through 5-10 minutes, do you have any reader questions? I'm happy to top off with
Jack. Maybe we just do Jack. Do you fancy doing your Satoshi branding? I thought it was pretty cool the way you did this. So while Jack's pulling up his screen, Jack started tweeting out that there needs to be a universal sign for Satoshis, the kind of unit, not Bitcoin, but the smaller unit. So I'll let you explain it from your side. Yeah, it looks great. Maybe zoom in a little bit if you can.
So someone messaged me. I think there's been a few efforts to brand Satoshis, right? Obviously, Bitcoin's got the orange B, and one of the biggest, I think, public relations issues or like adoption and messaging issues that Bitcoin has. Like, I can't afford a single Bitcoin, right? Or like it's just very unrelatable, this idea of like a $30,000 or $40,000 or $60,000 thing, depending on the day of the week. So Satoshis, if you believe in the long-term thesis of Bitcoin, they are going to be the unit that goods will be priced in inevitably, right? You're not going to buy 0.00000023 Bitcoin for a loaf of bread. It's going to be 230 Satoshis or whatever the denomination is. So I got a DM like, this is a cool design challenge. Just went through the logic of how do we get to a symbol. You could derive a whole number of like S forms, but the idea that I had was, why don't you take some of the component parts of the B? So if you're listening and you envision a capital B, you have these two like voids in the middle of the B. You take those and just simplify them, obviously, because you need to have something for something as ubiquitous as this, something that you can draw. So the idea that you take those two voids in the capital B, you simplify those into a stack of essentially two squares. And then you got to get to a point where this thing is unique. And if you really want to solve the problem from a design perspective, can it do something more than a traditional symbol for, like the dollar, for example, it's associated with this concept of money. I think the idea of Bitcoin and this new paradigm of money and energy, there's maybe a stronger story you can tell there. So we'll throw the link to this thread in there, but I then rotated these two squares and turned them into kind of two square diamonds on top of one another. And then the final piece is kind of compressed that so it looks like an hourglass, right? So the idea that I think this long-term thesis of a lot of Bitcoiners is that storing your wealth in a asset like Bitcoin really contextualizes time for you. So a currency that is deflationary, I mean, I'm not even sure if that's an accurate way to describe it, but capped supply, let's say, is effectively, the longer you hold on to it, the more valuable it becomes, which is, an inverse value proposition to a currency that can be printed. And that represents how much time you're able to sustain yourself or your family, right? So if we're able to create a symbol that implies some of that quality, I think, one, it gets people super curious about it. And you can also borrow this like effectively ancient symbol for measuring time, which is the hourglass, right? Where you have the sand in these two containers and it would measure the speed at which sand travel from the top to the bottom. So in the same way you would have like 69 cents, it would be the 69 in the sea. The visual that I'm pointing up now, if you're not watching on YouTube, is 100 million Satoshis, which is represented by this geometric hourglass. And then the final tweet is like, if you really want something like this to take off, or if you're trying to solve a design challenge, a lot of people kind of stylize this stuff, right? They go to a place of like, oh, we could put like a little edge on this thing here, or we could like make a little gap between that and that. We could be really clever with it. If you need something to work at this scale, one, it has to be obviously reproducible on a computer really easily and be able to print on a bank statement at like some ridiculously small size. But also, people need to be able to draw it by hand. So if you're the promise of Bitcoin, if you can run a node off a phone, a $25 phone in sub-Saharan country somewhere, then you need to be able to write on the signage of like when you're selling something with a pen or like any instrument that you would use manually. So that's like trying to come at it and stress test it from all these different angles. That's where I ended up. But we'll throw a link to the thread here as well. And got a couple people that try and get it in front of someone like Jack Dorsey, who, integrated the Bitcoin B into what is effectively what we call the most liquid attention network on the planet. A few, yeah, we got some good retweets as well. Pomp, Dan Held, some of the big Bitcoin proponents, and some good messages. Yeah, again, it's like it's a super hard thing to solve for, and there are brands that are really trying to own some other symbols and have been in the space for a while. And but I think like if you got something like this onto a Coinbase or a Cash App, for example, you could really change user behavior, right? Buying 100 sats a day is like a decimal place, and it's of fiat currency, but it's very demoralizing, I think, to look at the, like, you just bought 0.000000000.
Yeah, it's like even hard to compute. It's like
exactly. So I think, well, like if the thesis plays out, the Bitcoin bull thesis plays out, then we're going to be pricing stuff in Satoshis. And if you want to onboard people into the ecosystem early on, you have to convince them that, or you have to like get closer to the way they think about numerology right now. Like the typical person views anything past 2 decimal places as 0. It doesn't matter. Like you have to really, it's the same idea that we were talking about with the NFT stuff. It's like there are barriers to entry that if you have this maximalist mentality, you're hurting your own cause by doing this, in the same way that Elon makes his message accessible through like memes and stuff like that. If he was posting white papers to his Twitter, would he have 60 million followers? No chance.
I got a notification there, man.
What?
Hey.
No, I just thought that's pretty funny. Real time. Laugh about it.
I just want to add, the reason I thought it was really cool, Jack, one is just because a lot of people forget you're a designer. Like that's your background, obviously, and the way you think, the way you see the world in visual ways, and the way you kind of problem solve that step by step. I thought it was really cool just to get that insight into your mind. And there was a couple other things you probably wrote in the tweet, but maybe you didn't mention here. One of them was like the concept of stacking sats. I don't know if you,
yeah,
which I thought was quite cool, because that's also something within the Bitcoin community. You'll hear that phrase. And the way you had done it visually was like those 2 boxes on top of each other were like stacking on top of each other. And then that last part you did talk about, which was the handwritten piece. That's something like, again, someone like me wouldn't think about that, because
that's really
I'm just
smart. Agreed.
Yeah, you have to think about like, what's the real world application of this? And like, if you just sent someone that end result and said, oh, here's the symbol, they'll be like, all right, cool, whatever. Right. Yeah, it looks decent, but when you explain every single part, it's really cool just to hear that insight.
Well, someone's, I should pull up the thing. I don't know if I'll be able to find this comment, but have you guys been watching Loki?
No, but I've heard all about it. A lot of people talking about it.
Really good feedback.
Well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this picture, but essentially some part of that storyline is, I mean, let me just pull my screen up again. Some of these replies, man, geez. Like people are obsessed with this thing. Like that thing that people used to draw in school, that like S thing. It's like, nobody's going to sit and draw like 30 seconds, like make this thing. And people like, if you haven't been in an environment where you have to solve these problems, I understand why you think that's a good suggestion, but it's not.
Everybody on Twitter just has it's like assholes, right? Everybody's got an opinion.
This is another one. It's like, very Star Trek style, but again, it's like 5 strokes of a pen instead of 1. The other one you could do without taking your pen off the page. And again, people don't think about that.
Love it.
I was trying to find the Loki thing, but there's a scene in that film where that symbol is like engraved in a door, and it represents some similar idea.
Yours, like the similar,
the geometric time thing. And another criticism, I wouldn't be fair to not bring this up, is Extinction Rebellion. That activist group uses the same symbol with a circle around it, which I think is kind of interesting that they came to the same conclusion, because in a weird way, the thesis of the 2 communities is similar, right? But they're just arguing about the reason for trying to save the world. Do you know what I mean?
Well, can you walk us through the Extinction Rebellion thesis?
Yeah, Extinction Rebellion is like, climate change is going to kill us all. We got 15 minutes before we're all going to be eviscerated by climate change, right? So here's a symbol that represents time. Whereas I think Bitcoin is like, we have to shift the behavior of human beings to think about long-term consequences of their actions. And if you change the monetary system, that changes the incentive system, and that will, in effect, create a much more stable environment for us to live in. So, different inspiration. I'm sure anybody who's like listening to this affiliated with either group is like furious right now, but I think there's some shared ground there.
Well, how about this is, man, if there's just only one person in the world right now that was trying to build a sustainable energy system and finding a second planet for us to go live on in case we're all extinct. Well, can we find somebody?
We'll have to, yeah. Maybe you could,
can we tweet it?
Maybe we could put that photo, maybe we could put the symbol as a tattoo on the photo of them having lunch together, and we can get him to look at it. We'll figure out a way.
Oh yeah, the last thing I'll add is I totally forgot to mention, it was so I did that thread with the photo of Bezos and Musk. So that's from a 2008 economics workshop. So it's actually not even from the real meal they had. The real meal they had was in 2004 in like some bar in Seattle. But Elon's reply was, and now he can bench a rhino, referring to Jeff Bezos, who is, bro,
incredible.
Bezos is like, the
talking of stacking sats. He's been stacking something.
But here's the thing, like, remember that photo of him at the Sun Valley conference or the Allen conference in Sun Valley? The famous one with him, the vest and the jacked look. He's way more jacked now. That's like 2-3 years ago.
Oh, really?
The dude's put on some weight, man. He's
going Dr. Dre level, man. Remember when Dr. Dre just turned up with one big neck?
Yeah.
that pic, I was like, is that Dr. Dre? He's
But I'll add one more thing because we totally forgot to do it. We have this whole list. And remember how we were supposed to talk about Chappelle on Rogan?
I know, that was on the didn't make it list. Yeah.
Chappelle showed up a few years after he quit the Chappelle show, jacked.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Dude, the photos of him going around New York, just sleeveless. And he explained on Rogan why he did it. He was just so sick and tired of the headlines saying that he was a crackhead who went to Africa because he's unstable. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to come back looking like freaking Terrell Owens, the wide receiver from the San Francisco 49ers. And, how's a crackhead going to look like this? That's why he got jacked. I love that, man. I love that. He's
absolutely ripped, man.
I was just going to add one, like, it wouldn't be right to not mention the meme. The Elon meme, you're not bald, you're just poor.
Dude, that's you. This is, we can add this for fun.
No, I didn't make that. That wasn't mine. Not my work. Unfortunately not.
All right, well,
all right, boys.
Anything else, boys?
I feel we could probably wrap it up. The only thing I'd say, I don't know if we'll have time, is the way we just got the genius breakdown from Jack on your design mind. We need to do it for our podcast cover art at some point. I don't know if we got time today.
Yeah, we got to do it properly. I'll line up all the versions. Yeah. Maybe I'll do a thread on it and we can break it down.
Yeah, the funny thing is, for anyone listening who hasn't noticed it before, probably have, just look at your screen right now. It looks like Word Art 99. And like I've shown a couple people who know me but don't know you guys, when we're talking about it, they're like, oh, let me subscribe right now. And they'll open up their screen and they're like, is this the right one? And I'm like, yeah, that one. Yeah. And I've got so used to it now. And they're like, oh, you guys really went all out on the cover art. And I'm like, oh,
change it, man.
I love it.
It stands out so much. If you look at if you're on Spotify, you're looking at all the different thumbnails. Yeah. Dude, it's just like, it
looks ridiculous, but in a good way. And that was, we'll share this another time, but the WhatsApp group we started, which was called 3 Unqualified Idiots, the original cover art that you made for that was something pretty similar, maybe with the clippy
right. We evolved
dude in there.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think we could talk about the genius of that another time, and that can be its own segment, but we'll save that for another one.
Stacked, man.
Yeah, this was
thanks
deep.
Thanks to everyone for making it past that thumbnail too. We appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously, man. You're talking about proof of work.
Yeah.
You had to go through some mental obstacles to justify listening to that one.
Somebody sees it over your shoulder on the subway. Yeah, respect.
They're in on a joke, man. So as always, thanks for being here. And if you want to hear more, you can join the Telegram group in the link below. We've talked about already. Make sure you're subscribed on Spotify and YouTube, Apple Podcasts, whatever you listen to, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace out.
Thank you. Peace out.